Hey everyone, Dark Magician of Team Sorcerers here, and welcome back to What If Wednesday. Yep, that's 3 back-to-back ones, and this is another one about Razor and Behemoth from Robot Wars. Because of the suggestion I got for the other one, it made me remember another one that I wanted to do for a while, and that was, what if Behemoth beat Razor in the grand final of the first World Championship? Because as you know, it came down to a judge's decision, but I feel like the only way Behemoth could have won is if Razor just couldn't get back up and Behemoth took no damage from the claw. So in that scenario, Behemoth would be crowned the world champion, and for the fourth wars they'd basically swap seeds, so Behemoth would be third and Razor would be sixth, but they'd still be in their same battles, but they'd just be switched around. So Behemoth would be in Heat B, Razor Heat N, and all the other heats play out the exact same way. So for Heat B, Behemoth and Arnold A. Terminator beat Rambot, Pussycat and Millian Bug beat Reptiron, and then Behemoth beats Millian Bug very easily, while Pussycat would beat Arnold A. Terminator pretty much in the same way as the real timeline, which was the final of the first Annihilator in Extreme 1. So then Pussycat and Behemoth would meet in the Heat final, but like I said before, because Behemoth was still slow at the time, it's no match for Pussycat, and Pussycat does significant damage and goes through to the semi-finals. So then Heat N, Razor's Heat. Razor and Robo Chicken beat Velociriptor, Exterminator and Judge Shred 2 beat Millennium Bug. So then Razor then beats Judge Shred 2, and I feel like Exterminator would, excuse me, would more than likely beat Robo Chicken and go through to face Razor, but of course Exterminator is no match and gets exterminated by Razor, and Razor goes through to the semi-finals in this timeline. So then semi-final 1, literally nothing changes, all the battles play out the same way, and Chaos 2 and Pussycat go through to the grand final. So then semi-final 2 is mostly the same. The only difference here is Razor would face Wild Thing, and Razor defeats Wild Thing very easily, and would then get pitted against Hypnodisc. So Stinger beats Panic Attack, that still happens, and well, in the Series 4 setting regarding Razor and Hypnodisc, I went over it several times already, and again, I feel like Hypnodisc would beat Razor here, and damage it to the point where it breaks down, just like it broke down against Pussycat. So Hypnodisc still goes through to the grand final, then the grand final basically plays out the same way. So then I'd need to figure out how the Series 5 seeds would look. I guess Behemoth would still be seeded 15th, despite being the world champion, or maybe it would be a bit higher. I'm not. It's really hard to tell. I mean, I guess it would be seeded 4th instead of Razor. Stinger would still be seeded 5th, and then yeah, that's how we work it out. So the top three would still be the same: Chaos 2, Pussycat, Hypnodisc. Then Behemoth would be fourth because of its World Championship status, along with the fact that it did still make the Heat final. Yeah, the Series 5 seedings were done weirdly, I think. Stinger would be fifth. Razor. Actually, no, Panic Attack would still be seeded sixth, and Razor would be seventh. Yeah, that's how it would more than likely work. Then 8 Firestorm 3, 9 Three Steaks to Heaven, 10 Wild Thing, 11 Wheelie Big Cheese, 12 Dominator 2, 13 Tornado, 14 Spawn Again, 15 Exterminator, and then all the other seeds are basically the same. So with this in mind, we go into the fifth wars. So Heat A, nothing changes, Chaos 2 wins that one, same with Heat B and C, basically. So Heat D, we'd have Razor in this one instead of Firestorm. So Razor would beat Big Nipper, so Chromalot beats Rohog, Reactor 2 beats Bot Out of Hell, Gemini beats Rough Dougal, Razor then beats Chromalot, Reactor 2 still beats Gemini, but Razor would beat Reactor 2. So Heat E, we've got 3 Stegs in this one. So 3 Stegs beats 11, Alien beats Velociraptor, Napalm beats Warhog, Prize Fighter beats Thermidor 2. So then Steg and Napalm would have a rematch from the third wars, but 3 Stegs would still win this one, while Prize Fighter Mach 2 beats Alien. And I think Prize Fighter would more than likely beat Steg here, because of its problem with the wheel, or even if that doesn't come up, then it would get flipped on its side and Prize Fighter would go through to the semi-finals. So then Heat F, what did I say? I said that would be Wheelie Big Cheese and Spawn Again. So Really Big Cheese would beat Wolverine, King Bee Powerworks beats Chronic 2, Corkscrew beats 13 Black, Spawn Again beats Evolution, then Wheelie Big Cheese then beats King Bee Powerworks fairly easily, Spawn Again beats Corkscrew, and then as I said in the other episode, Wheelie Big Cheese beats Spawn Again, because of the problems it had with the flipper. So in Heat G, that was Dominator 2 and Tornado in this one. So yeah, Dominator 2 beats Derek, Diator beats Evolution, no, Diator beats Dome, Evolution beats Sabertooth, Tornado beats Gravedigger. And for the sake of simplicity, we'll just have Tornado face Diator still, while Dominator 2 fights Evolution. So Diator, of course, beats Tornado, and Dominator 2 would beat Evolution, despite Evolution possibly putting up a decent fight. Then Dominator 2 and Diator would face off in the Heat final, but I don't think Diator would be able to do much, and Dominator 2 would do significant damage with the axe and still go through to the semi-finals. Then Heat H, that would be Wild Thing and Behemoth. So Wild Thing would beat Trouble and Strife. Axor beats Granny's Revenge. Crustacean beats Robot Chicken Evo. Behemoth beats Supernova. Well, we know Crustacean beats Behemoth, but what about Wild Thing and Axor? I mean, yeah, Axor does have a flipper, but I don't know if it would completely flip Wild Thing over. Maybe it would once, but I think Wild Thing would be able to get at an angle where the disc could damage the flipper. It wouldn't be much, but it would still be quite significant. But yeah, it would go pretty much a similar way to the Trouble and Strife fight. But yeah, I think Wild Thing would just about get through, and it would be Crustacean. So yeah, Wild Thing wins. So then, Heat Eye. Yeah, nothing would change here. Wait, no, yes it would, because Firestorm is in this one, so yeah. Firestorm beats Decapitator. Tetanus beats Onslaught. Bigger Brother beats Tip Top. Splinter beats Viper 01. So Firestorm would then beat Tetanus, and Bigger Brother would beat Splinter. And then in the Heat final, well, more often than not, Firestorm does beat Bigger Brother whenever they meet. So Firestorm would win this, which already changes things significantly. So it means Bigger Brother doesn't go through to the grand final here. So yeah, Heat J, Panic Attacks Heat, nothing changes here. Wait, hold on, I've done goofed, because Behemoth isn't seeded 15th here, so, wait, so scratch that. It would be Exterminator in Wild Thing's Heat. So, yeah, Exterminator beats Immortalis, and Crustacean would beat Exterminator, because Exterminator does end up breaking down. So yeah, now we come to Behemoth's Heat. So, because I said it was seeded 4th, so yeah, Behemoth beats Supernova, Widow's Revenge beats Something, Destructor Bubble beats Accident, and Suicidal Tendencies beats Rick, until Rick replaces it, because Suicidal Tendencies had those mechanical problems. So Behemoth beats Widow's Revenge, Rick beats Destructor Bubble, and in the Heat final, I think Behemoth would more than likely beat Rick. So yeah, Behemoth would go through to the semi-finals for the first time since Series 2. And then the last Heat, Heat L, nothing changes there. So for the semi-finals, Firestorm would face S3, Chaos 2 would fight Prize Fighter, and let's see, who did I say won Heat G? It was Dominator 2, so yeah, Dominator 2 would fight Behemoth, so yeah, Firestorm 3 against S3, this would basically play out the same way as their actual Series 6 fight, with Firestorm flipping S3 out the arena. Chaos 2 would easily beat Prize Fighter, and Behemoth would pretty much beat Dominator 2 in the same way it beats Steel Avenger, since they're quite similar. So yeah, that happened. So Prize Fighter, S3 and Dominator 2 are in the losers melee. But I don't think Prize Fighter would be able to do much against either robot. So, so yeah, it would get damaged by S3, Dominator 2 might struggle against S3, but yeah, S3 would just keep slamming Dominator 2 on the side. It would be hard for Dominator 2 to get a hit with the axe, so yeah, S3 just gets straight back in. So yeah, Firestorm would then fight Chaos 2 in a rematch, while Behemoth would face S3. And I feel like I've gone over this before, but yeah. In a matchup against other flippers, Chaos 2 seems to have that problem where it ends up on its back and being unable to get back up. So that's more than likely what would happen here, and Firestorm avenges Firestorm 1 and goes through to the grand final. As for Behemoth and S3, well, I think Behemoth would be able to get at S3 quite quickly at a certain angle where it wouldn't be able to hit Behemoth from the side. And Behemoth would just shove it around and then end up flipping it out of the arena. So Behemoth goes through to the grand final. So, in the other semi-final, we would have Really Big Cheese against Wild Thing, Hypnodisc against Razor again, and Pussycat against Panic Attack. So Really Big Cheese would start off quite strong against Wild Thing. I think Wild Thing would be able to withstand a flip or two, but then Wild Thing would be able to come back and push S3 Really Big Cheese around, but Really Big Cheese would end up breaking down and Wild Thing goes through. And then, well, Hypnodisc would beat Razor again, I think. Like I said a couple of times before, I genuinely think in the Series 5 setting, Hypnodisc would beat Razor and have it be the same case as if it was Pussycat fighting. So yeah, that happens, and speaking of Pussycat, that beats Panic Attack. So it's almost the same losers melee as the real one, only it's Razor fighting Panic Attack and Really Big Cheese this time. But again, Razor would stay out of the way of Really Big Cheese's flipper, and Really Big Cheese would break down. Panic Attack would also get shoved around by Razor, especially since Panic Attack is still having intimate problems as well, so Razor gets back in on a judge's decision, and would go on to face Pussycat. While Hypnodisc fights Wild Thing. Now, even though Wild Thing has a spinner as well, I feel like Hypnodisc would still come out on top here. There's, it is more manoeuvrable and controlled than Wild Thing, and this plays out near enough the same way as their real fight from the real Fourth Wars, with a wheel getting damaged and getting wonky. Hypnodisc just about scrapes through. Razor would then fight Pussycat, but I feel like this would end up playing out the same way as their grudge match from Extreme 1 would go. And as a result, Razor sadly loses here, and Pussycat goes through to the grand final yet again. So that's another big change. Razor fails to reach the grand final and doesn't win the Fifth Wars. So we have Pussycat and Behemoth in the grand final here instead of Razor and Bigger Brother. So let's see. So Pussycat, Hypnodisc, Behemoth. Firestorm. So, yeah, Firestorm would fight Pussycat and Hypnodisc would fight Behemoth. And the fight between Pussycat and Firestorm basically plays out the same way, because it's still the Series 5 setting. Firestorm wins on a judge's decision. And now we have a rematch between Hypnodisc and Behemoth, and they did already fight each other in the All-Stars, and Hypnodisc of course lost due to a wire being in the wrong place, but now that there's a wire in the right place, Hypnodisc has more of a chance. So yeah, it basically plays out the same way as their All-Stars fight, only Hypnodisc is fully functioning, fully working, and yeah, this would end up going to the judges, I think, and Hypnodisc wins on damage. So Hypnodisc makes it to the top two once again. And then Behemoth and Pussycat have a rematch and grudge match from the Fourth Wars in this timeline, but this time things are different. I mean, Behemoth is faster, more manoeuvrable, and has a better chance of dealing with Pussycat, and would probably end up flipping it out. Although there is a chance Pussycat could damage the side and make it so the scoop can't function and fully lift, but it wouldn't stop Behemoth shoving Pussycat all over the place, although it doesn't matter either way who wins, because Pussycat doesn't enter the 6 Wars. So yeah, either Behemoth gets the bronze or Pussycat does. Either way, Behemoth would be seeded third. For the 6 Wars. So now we've got Firestorm 3 against Hypnodisc in the grand final. And the problem with the link wouldn't come up, I would think. But yeah, this pretty much ends up playing out the same way as the real third place playoff, only this time Firestorm has a fully working flipper, and that gives it the edge in this fight, and it would help actually flip Hypnodisc over and get it into the pit. So despite the damage, Firestorm would win the 5th Wars, and Hypnodisc ends up finishing second again. So the seeds for the 6 Wars would be almost the same, only Behemoth would be seeded instead of Bigger Brother, but that's easy to figure out because Bigger Brother can still go in Behemoth's heat, and that basically stays the same. But yeah, we've got 1 Firestorm, 2 Hypnodisc, 3 Behemoth, 4 Chaos 2, 5 Razor, 6 Wild Thing, 7 S3, 8 Panic Attack, 9 Dominator 2, 10 Stinger, 11 Spawn again, and Tornado would be seeded 12th still. So yeah, Heat A, Firestorm's Heat, nothing changes. Heat B, which is now Behemoth and Bigger Brother's Heat, yeah, nothing changes there, but of course Bigger Brother ends up winning the heat and taking Behemoth out, which is a major shock, seeing the third seed and world champion knocked out right away. Actually, then again, I didn't even think about the second world championship. I mean, Behemoth would obviously be in there. I'll have to come back to Series 6 in a minute. Now the way, now the robots chosen to represent the UK in the second World Championship were the semi-finalists of the first All-Stars tournament, Chaos 2, Tornado, Razor and Firestorm. But Behemoth, however, didn't make it that far, but would still be in the World Championship anyway. So I don't know who'd end up being left out. I guess probably Tornado, just because it hasn't been around as long as the others. It would make sense to have Chaos 2 still, because it was still the UK champion at the time. So, yeah, I guess it would make sense to have Behemoth replace Tornado. Obviously, Manta and Drillzilla get past Chaos 2 and Firestorm respectively. Razor wins its fight with Diotor, Flensburger Power and what was that spinning American robot's name? Oh, fuck, why can't I remember? Like, I should know this, considering it's in the Robot Wars game on the original Xbox. Fuck, why am I drawing a blank? It's, the spinning one, with the American flag. I need to look this up. This is bugging me. The Revolutionist. That was it. I don't know why I couldn't remember the name. So yeah, like I said, Behemoth replaces Tornado, and I need to just see who Tornado fought. I know Philippa was one of them. Oh yeah, Panzer Mark II, Tornado, Philippa, Yebo, or whatever it's called. Yeah, Behemoth would be able to beat any of these guys, I think. So yeah, Behemoth would go through. But now I'm not sure who'd fight whom, because in the semi-finals they put the two American robots against each other and the two British robots against each other. But in this case, it would be the two finalists of the last World Championship. So, would they really do that? If they did, then yeah, Razor would beat Behemoth like it usually does, and otherwise the rest of the World Championship plays out the same way, and Razor wins the second World Championship. Otherwise, well, yeah, I reckon. Well, we know Razor can beat Drillzilla. Razor would also be able to beat Manta. Behemoth would be able to beat Manta, but I don't know about Drillzilla. I mean, it should be able to. But yeah, either Behemoth would be able to turn it over, or Drillzilla would just be too heavy and would be able to shove Behemoth all over the place and win on a judge's decision and actually take up the world champion there. Either way, I see Razor winning the second world championship still. Anyway, back to Series 6 though. So Behemoth would win Heat B. In Heat C, that would be Razor's Heat now. Razor wins that one. D, S3's Heat, nothing changes there. E, Dominator 2's Heat. Dominator 2 wins that. F, Spawn Again's Heat. Spawn Again wins that. G, Tornado's Heat. Literally nothing changes. H, that's now Stinger's Heat. 13 Black wins that. I, Panic Attack's Heat, nothing changes there with Terahertz winning. Then Heat J, that's now Wild Thing's Heat. Wild Thing still wins. K, that's now Chaos 2's Heat. And Danzon Kia wins that one. And the last Heat, Hypnodisc's Heat. Yeah, Hypnodisc of course wins that one. And now there's a fly in here. Wonderful. I haven't got my SWAT on me. You wretched fly. Take that. Yeah, I'll deal with it later. So, yeah, the semi-finals. Firestorm would fight Dominator 2. Bigger Brother would fight Spawn again. And Razor would fight S3. So yeah, Firestorm against Dominator 2, that's a rematch from the Fourth Wars, and Firestorm would beat Dominator 2 and get revenge. Bigger Brother would beat Spawn again, because Spawn again's still having problems, and Razor would beat S3. In fact, it would play out the same way as their Series 5 fight. So the losers melee, that would be S3, Dominator 2, and Spawn again. Spawn again is still struggling and can't really do much against either. And Dominator 2 will just struggle again, and S3 gets back in. And would go on to face Firestorm while Bigger Brother and Razor fight again. And yeah, the Firestorm against S3 fight plays out the same way as before, with Firestorm winning and Razor beats Bigger Brother. And yeah, Razor and Firestorm still make it to the grand final. So for this next one, I guess just to try and match the timeline as much as possible, Tornado would fight Hypnodisc. I guess 13 Black would fight Terahertz, which means that Wild Thing would fight Danton Kier. So yeah, a bit of musical chairs there, but yeah, Tornado beats Hypnodisc, Danton Kier beats Wild Thing. And that's for Terahertz and 13 Black. It's a tough one to call, but I feel like 13 Black would more likely win. And Terahertz would get done in the same way that Fluffy did it in, basically. So we'd have Hypnodisc, Terahertz, and Wild Thing in the losers melee. Now I don't know if Hypnodisc would end up ricocheting off either of these robots and bouncing off the wall, but Wild Thing doesn't really stand much of a chance against either of them. Yeah, Hypnodisc would keep slamming the disc into Wild Thing and get Terahertz a couple of times. Terahertz might end up breaking down, it's hard to say. It depends how much good shape it's in, really, after taking damage from 13 Black. Either way, I'd say Hypnodisc would more likely win this one and get back into the main competition. So let's see, we'd now be left with Hypnodisc, Tornado, 13 Black, Danton Kier. Yeah, Hypnodisc would go on to fight Danton Kier, and Tornado would fight 13 Black. That's probably what would happen, or it could be the other way round. I don't know. But yeah, Danton Kier would flip Hypnodisc out, and Tornado would beat 13 Black with no problems. But yeah, it really depends who fights whom. I mean, I still think Hypnodisc would beat 13 Black, whereas Tornado would beat Danton Kier. Either way, Tornado is going through. But if Hypnodisc goes through as well, then the grand finalists will be Firestorm, Hypnodisc, Razor, and Tornado. So Tornado would fight Firestorm still in the Eliminator and beat it, and this time Razor would fight Hypnodisc, and this time, because it's the Series 6 setting, Razor would beat Hypnodisc, and then Firestorm would beat Hypnodisc in the playoff and finish third yet again, and then the grand final would play out the same way, with Tornado beating Razor. Again, Razor so close. Otherwise, if Danton Kier goes through, then Danton Kier would fight Firestorm, and Tornado would fight Razor 1 round early, and Tornado would beat Razor, Firestorm would beat Danton Kier, Razor beats Danzonker in the playoff, and Tornado beats Firestorm in the grand final. Either way, Tornado is winning this. And then we end up with a pretty similar seeding lineup for the 7th War, so I'm not going to go into that, because Typhoon 2 just ends up still winning the series anyway. So yeah, that's basically what would happen if Behemoth won the first World Championship instead of Razor. Even though Razor wins the second World Championship, it isn't as successful as in the real timeline. And I mean, it may make the semi-finals of Series 4, but it never wins Series 5, sadly, and never becomes the UK champion as a result, unfortunately. Yeah, that's going to do it for this one. Thanks for watching.